Hi there. So I'm going to do another recording just to work through some of the thoughts that I'm working with. Today I attended the second session. Well, it's a third, but this is my second one, joining live with Tio Cassin, Ghost Horse, and Gabriel Crumb, and our course around relanguaging. And today's was really, really impactful. I guess something I'm still working through. One of the things I wrote was how today, I don't think I want to get into that part yet. I've been thinking a lot about domestication today. It was a word that came up yesterday, and one of the presenters at the session I attended yesterday raised the word domestication, and she gave some of the criteria for what it means and looks like for domestication to happen. And I don't remember all of them, but from what I understood, it was like to domesticate something means you are keeping them within a particular parameters. You regulate what it is that they eat. You regulate their movements, whether they come or go, how they're able to come and go. And today, Tio Cassin was talking about in his lineage, his mother, I believe, was born 88 years ago. And then his maternal or paternal grandparents were born in the last century. And one of the things that he brought up was how in the 1870s, it was illegal. It was illegal for Native Indigenous people to practice their ways of being. It was illegal for them to speak their language. It was illegal for them to have children outside of hospitals. And he shared a beautiful story about his own birth story. I don't want to get into it because I also want to honor. I forgot the last time I got so excited that I was sharing things that people had spoken about within the course. And now I have to be mindful not to share other people's things. But all to say is today the context of colonialism came up, and and he was breaking down the word, right? From Cristobal Colon. That came later. Okay, so sorry. Let me go back to the 1800s. So in the 1870s, it was illegal for Indigenous people to practice certain things. Sweat lodges were banned. Basically, everything was banned. And the word that came to me when he was describing that was domestication from yesterday. That is a form of domesticating people, right? And so the settlers, in a sense, can be said to have domesticated Native people based on the definition of domestication I got yesterday. And then the word domestication came up again later on when we were talking about nature, and when we're out. First of all, I think over 90% of Indigenous communities, they don't have a word for nature. It's an English word. And then he was saying over 60% of English is Latin. But nature, what we call nature, the idea of we talk about talking to trees. And that's something that I was also thinking about this week. And I wrote that into one of my short stories, actually. The idea of, in my story, one of the characters in Ghana, there's the Aburi Gardens, and their grandmother went to the Aburi Gardens often to talk to the trees because they gave good wisdom. That was something I was thinking about this week. So I really love that the idea of talking to trees came up this week. A couple weeks ago, I had a friend that was going for a walk, and I told her, say hi to the trees for me. And I think for a lot of people that might seem really weird, like trees can't talk. Well, that's what you think. Again, people want to be right? This idea that Western knowledge is right, is science, is the highest form of intelligence. Yes and no. but we talked about talking to trees today, and the interesting thing was the perspective of the animals looking at us. And Tio Casson asked something that said, do animals lie to us, right? Like, they don't lie to us. And the first thing that came to my head without even thinking was maybe the domesticated ones too, right? I was thinking of like domesticated cats or dogs, and I was wondering, maybe they lie to us as an act of rebellion because we've domesticated them. Again, I don't know where that came from, if it's right or if it's wrong, but that was the context of domestication. Those are the two contexts of domestication. And then later on, Tio Casson was breaking down the words. So from Cristobal Colon to, so colon means crooked. And I was looking up the word colon. And then I was like, okay, the colon, it kind of makes sense why that would be the human colon, in our organ, right? And I'm like, was that crooked? And then I was thinking about the colon in English, like grammatically the colon, thinking about crooked in that kind of a sense. But then he talked about colony, and colony is people away from home. And then he said, when you add the I's, the I-Z-E, colonize, it's to make or become, in this way, like Americanize, and to be treated in a very specific type of way. And so I was thinking about that and a conversation I was having about my body earlier on this week. And I was sharing with somebody this week that for the first time I was able to tap into my body in the energies in my specifically in my pelvic, in my womb. For those who don't know, and maybe this is oversharing, I don't think it's oversharing. I talked about this before, and even if it's oversharing, it's on brand for me. So, but I live with chronic pain, mostly on my left side. We've been trying to figure out exactly what it is. I've had people tell me it's sciatica. I've had others tell me it's not sciatica, it's tics. I had somebody recently tell me, a doctor recently tell me that it's not any of that. I had a running injury and it healed, but the way, because I became so sensitive, like hypersensitive to the feeling, I just feel everything. None of it makes sense to me in terms of how I experience the pain in my body. I know that it started as an injury, and I think the doctor is right because I have the pain networks has wired my sensitivity in a way where I feel. That's where I feel a lot of things intuitively. Sensations, information will come to me in my sacrum. In Mexico, there's an indigenous community, Chital. There's an indigenous community I read about who they believe that the sacrum bone is a second brain. No, yes. Is it the brain? I think it's they're saying that it's the second brain, and basically we receive a lot of information in our sacrum. And that's very true for me, especially since my injury. But it's very painful. And I've been trying. I don't know how people do energy work, but for me, it's very, in sites where the energy feels like this, it's just like, it's like chaos. It's not flowing like this. It's not flowing like this. It's not flowing. It's just not flowing. It's just chaos. And that's been in my sacrum, in my pelvic, there's been a lot of chaos down there. And it's been so painful that I haven't been able to reach the center. Another word that came up today that I loved was marrow, because I work with this. For me, all of the pain, it comes down to the marrow. Something is going on in my bone marrow that it cannot be detected by the test that I do. And so everything comes up normal. But at the core, at the inside, at the middle, in the marrow, there's some disruption that's happening that if I'm not aware of, is going to eventually move outside of the marrow into, I don't know. I don't know. Intuitively, the marrow is where I do a lot of work. The marrow, the liver, and the kidneys are areas within me that I have to work on, including the pelvic. I'm getting off topic. Where was I? So the energy work that I did this week, I've been getting closer and closer and closer to the center, to the site. I call it the site of the injury. So wherever it is, it starts in my butt cheek. There's a place in my butt cheek where it hurts so bad and it's so tight and so rigid that it won't let me close. It has not been letting me close. Like, it's been kicking me out. Every time I try to get close, the pain is so intense that I'm not able to. And for years, since like 2015, I've been trying to do this work to get to it. And I haven't been able to. And this past week, I think it's a combination of the continued energy work that I do. I got injections a couple weeks ago, maybe like a month now. I got injections at the hospital, cortisol or steroids. I got 2 injections in the spine and in my butt, and that helped to numb some of the pain. I also started new pain medication that's been helping to alleviate some of that pain. So like, because I'm not feeling as much, I'm able to like slowly, I've been working to get to that site. And this week I hit something, like I feel like I touched it, and it was just chaos. It felt like something was jammed, like the energy was in me was trying to flow, but there was a jam. I'm not going to explain it here. Maybe that'll be another episode, but all to say is it was so painful for me to feel that I wasn't able to feel it. And when I was able to get just a sliver into it this week, it was like I could feel in my body the damage that has been happening within me. That I could, because I couldn't get to it, it was like a free-for-all. Like, it just was, my body just started doing whatever it wanted to do. Things were blocked, things were not flowing. And I was speaking to somebody this week, and the visual, the concept, the idea that came to me to explain it, because when I felt it's like more and more I'm realizing the damage. It's like I'm waking up to my own inner turmoil, if that makes sense. And it was like, what happened? Like, I've been here. I've been in my body. Like, I thought I was aware. How did this happen? And the idea, I believe it was Desmond Tutu. May he rest in peace. Either him or Nelson Mandela. Again, may he rest in peace. But it was a South African. I think it was Desmond Tutu who said when they came, we had the land, they had the Bible. When they left, we had the Bible, they had the land. It was that kind of like hoodwinked. Like, it was like bamboozled. I was feeling in my body how I was bamboozled. Like, how did I get left with this damage? And like, who took off with my eggs? And now I can't like have it's fucking up my fertility, and I might not even have kids. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but I felt that process of colonization within me, of that, like, how we needed, not we, because it was definitely not me, but how colonizers, be it different European superpowers, whether it was the British, the Germans, the French, the Spaniards, the Dutch, these are some of the places, these are some of the people from these places who went out and conquered other places in the world. When they left, like, I felt like that, like, in my body, there had been all of this damage that was happening, and I didn't even know it was happening. And my question was like, what happened? And who did it serve for me to not feel what was happening within me? And so I've been thinking a lot about this idea of how it's such a threat to be present, to feel in this present moment and not be in like trauma that's taking us to the past, or fear that's moving us to the future. And when we're not dysregulated all over, when we're not unhinged, when we are able to be present in the moment, that is such a threat. I never realized how, intellectually, I studied these things and I know it, but to feel it in my body that, like, wow, this is really threatening. Somebody took off. And for Colored Girls, one of the characters, like, somebody almost took off with all my, and then insert the word. That's what I felt like. Somebody almost took off with my womb, with my pelvic, with this land, my body, my home. And so that was what I was thinking about today.
Okay, I have to add one more thing. When I talk about the part, when I'm talking about the bamboozled, like what happened here, the reason why the quote from, I was gonna say Marcus Garvey, not Marcus Garvey, Bishop Tutu, the reason why that quote resonated is because by the time I could feel, period. By the time I could feel like I knew immediately the level of damage that had happened. I don't know how to explain it. It's like externally, the doctors tell me you have X amount of eggs, your fertility has been affected because of your periods. And we know that can happen for a lot of women who have painful periods, is it'll fuck with their fertility. And so what I had to reckon with in finally feeling was feeling all of that damage. That's what I mean by damage. I explained it to my friend as raw meat. Like it was just dead, lifeless. No energy had been moving through there for so long, for years. It felt like a traffic jam. So when you have a traffic jam, it's like an ambulance trying to get to a place in traffic, but all the cars are jammed up, so the ambulance can never get to that person who is in need of service or help. And so what happens? The person that's waiting for the ambulance ends up getting worse, having other complications, and or maybe then dies, right? And I'm like so out of shape. That was the way I could make sense of it. When I finally felt what my uterus was, the pain that I've been feeling, it was like, this is serious. Like, this is no one, like, people don't believe me when I say I am in pain, but this is a level of destruction that has happened within me. Like, I could feel why it's been so painful, why I couldn't get there. It was damage. There's a lot of damage down there that whenever I get tests, nobody can see it. They're like, oh, it's fine. But then now it's like, oh, well, oh, girl, you only got 4 eggs. Right? How did that happen? I feel like part of me not being able to feel that pain was all of that was happening. My fertility, all of what, I don't know the science behind it, but it all was eroding. And I could feel that because all I could feel was pain, but I couldn't feel at a certain level. Teocassi would call it like the marrow. I couldn't get to the marrow of it. And once I did, it just, it feels like raw meat, like just dead flesh. And that's what I mean by I feel bamboozled, because I've been here all along. How didn't I know that this was happening? Where was I? It's like I woke up and like there's this mess in front of me, and that's very much so as within as without, right? That's very much so. If you know my life, there's so many things that for so long I put my sand in the head. My head in the sand. Or again, it was too painful to feel, so I dissociated. I created fantasy worlds. I just could not accept reality. And as I come more into my body, as I come more into that thing that I feared that I wasn't able to face, myself, the situation, the chaos of life, be it the pandemic, my finances, my being blacklisted, like there's so many different things, and it's like, yeah, there's nowhere else to go but through. And that's what it felt like. Like I woke up, and I think that's why it reminded me of that Desmond Tutu quote, because it's like when they came, we had the land, they had the Bible. By the time they left, we had the Bible, they had the land. Like what happened? What happened is we were so brutalized, and we were still fighting to resist, but life just came at us so fast with that level of destruction and brutality, right? We're talking about genocide. We're talking about, I don't remember the word at the moment. What is that word? Apartheid. Like these are brutal administrations to live under. that you are literally just surviving. Most of you are actually dying. And that process, you can't feel. It's too painful to feel that. And so you have to do certain things to not feel. Be it fight, work, survive. But you don't have the luxury to feel that pain because you know that once you get into it, it's too painful to touch. So anyways, that's what's happening. I think collectively, a lot of us are also being like, ooh, this does not look good. That's what I meant. Bye.
Another comment came up that touched on that, this idea that for some of us, it's against our religion to feel the energy in our body because that is seen as witchcraft, that is seen as evil, that is seen as demonic. You should not be able to access your body in this kind of a way where you are tapping into the intelligence system within. That was a huge no-no. That's exactly why Tio Kassem was saying in the 1800s, it was illegal. It was illegal for Indigenous communities to practice and to tap into these knowledges that are felt and embodied. It's very threatening. And I mean, to some, if you don't understand it, if you're very much steeped in that Western positivist kind of framework, then it makes no sense. She sounds like she's crazy. She's off her rocker. What else do they say? It's delusion. What else do people say about these kind of Indigenous knowledges that they don't get because they don't get that they think is therefore wrong or not even real? But
so I wanted to touch on the part about the different things that they'll call you, we, us, whoever that is. A lot of Indigenous ways of being then becomes or gets criminalized. We already saw this in 1800s. Or it gets seen as pathology or deviance to be medicalized. So often this idea of like talking to trees, talking to animals, that then becomes read as like schizophrenia or madness, and like you need to take medication because you're hearing voices. And that's often because, at least in my experience, for a lot of people like me who also come from Indigenous communities, and we talked about that today, how everybody wants to be Indigenous, and apparently people are Indigenous to the land. But what happens is folks like myself who have lineages where we used to have a different way of knowing, which is very similar to Indigenous communities here, although there are a lot of differences. And in my context, for instance, we also went to war with other tribes. So there was a level of dominance there. I think it was Erica or somebody posting yesterday about African communities and patriarchy before pre-contact. But all to say is after contact, how a lot of us knew how to be became seen as bad, right? It became criminalized. And right now it's medicalized, often under schizophrenia. So that's all I wanted to say.
Feel. And then Tio Kassem told me something that I'm going to reflect on this week, was like, don't own the feeling. Don't own the feeling. It is not yours, right? It might be coming from the wind, he said. And so that's something I'm really thinking about, is really continuing to feel and being okay with not knowing or intellectualizing or making sense of what I'm feeling, and instead really just feeling it and learning to really embody and connect with it. Yesterday morning, I was in so much pain, and part of it was because I could feel myself trying to land in my leg. I don't know if that makes sense to people, but I've been so disembodied from especially the lower half of me that like I can feel myself now that I cleared a lot of that debris, a lot of that energy. I still have a lot more to work through, but I can feel myself trying to land in my leg, trying to like arrive home in my body, and it's not clicking. I'm not fully in my leg yet. I'm not fully present. It hurts. There's still a pain there that it hurts. It's almost as if my body doesn't trust me to get too close because it feels like I abandoned it. I didn't treat it properly. Like it's almost like we hear how you talk about us, right? If you've ever had self-hatred, and definitely I've had that. I've been struggling with like low self-esteem, low confidence, and it's almost like my body being like, you separated yourself from us and you made yourself an enemy from us as in my body. And now we don't fully trust you to come home to us because your way of living really was harmful to us, and us in this case being my body. And Gabriel was also bringing up the parallels between the body. If we think of it as the land, there's a lot of parallels between how we've abandoned the land and how we're trying to come back home to it, almost when it's too late, and almost when we see, like I did with my body, like, what the happened here? It's almost too late. Like, I might not be able to have kids at this point because there's so much pain in me. There's so much that was going on, so much damage that happened, that I might not be able to have kids. And that's right. It's like, it's too late. And I think if we were thinking about like the climate crisis, the way we treat each other as humans, the divisions, the separations, it feels like it's almost too late. But at the same time, me even being able to feel that was such a sense of hope, right? And I think so many of us are also waking up and realizing that it's almost too late and we have to do something to course correct. And that's where I was this week. And I think the collective is also getting there, or is there, and I'm just following along. But I'll end on, it's almost 20 minutes. I'll end with saying, sometimes because Western society tells us that these things are not real, that indigenous knowledges are, this made up thing, that energy work is not real, the science, that, diagnosis, the medical field, medicine, these are the valid ways, I almost don't believe myself and I'll gaslight myself. And so even when I told my friend this story, I was like, did I do anything in my body? And I told her I'm waiting to see how this manifests in the physical world. The next day, and this might be TMI, but I've been taking birth control for the last 3-4 months to stop my period, which is to stop the pain. And I haven't had my period in about almost 3 months. But the next day after I tapped into that, I started spotting, and I haven't started spotting since June. And all week I've been bleeding as if I had my menstrual cycle again, which again I haven't had in almost 4 months because I'm still on birth control to stop it. And it was such a relief, if that makes sense, because it was like, I'm not crazy. I did do something connected, something happened in me in that area that it triggered this again. And it was almost as if my body said, okay, we get that you're taking these birth controls, but what you did activated something that is bringing us back home to that natural cycle. And so we are reverting back to that natural cycle of how it needs to be. And all week I've been TMI, oversharing. Dorothy was bleeding this week. Couldn't tell that. But I think I only share that to say that energy work was real, and that my body has this intelligence where it started to go through this process that it hasn't been going through in 3 or 4 months. And I'm not sure what it means. I don't know if I did more damage than good, but all I know is that energy work, my body was feeling it, the communication that I'm having with my body, it is real, and something is happening. I was all over the place, which is the whole point of this session. It was just to help me kind of make sense of to integrate some of the information that I took in today. So I'm not even sure if I'll post this, but I just wanted to work through some of those thoughts out loud without writing it first. So thanks for listening. If you even are listening, I'm sure you probably heard this even if I don't post it, because that's how fucking annoying people are. That's a whole nother topic. Okay, bye.